On the palette and the subject of my investigation is the case of the accused Gilgo Beach, Long Island serial killer. It's a case that has taken decades to develop, and one where many never thought there would be a true trial, but it's going to have. Greater than. Along the windswept shores of Long Island, a dark secret slip. Beneath the sand for more than a decade. The remains of young women escorts, mothers' daughters, were unearthed near Gilgo Beach. Their lives silenced and their stories buried. The community was haunted by whispers of a calculating predator, someone who blended into summer urban life while carrying out unimaginable acts of violence. Investigators pieced together a chilling puzzle. Bernard phones, burlap wrapping, and digital trails. Leading back to Anne being home, the suspect, once seen as ordinary, was anything but in court. Prosecutors describe a monster hiding in plain sight. Neighbors recall a man who waved, smiled, and kept his secrets very deep. As the trial looms, Gilgo Beach remains more than a crime scene. It is a graveyard of innocence and a reminder of how evil can leave quietly among us, by the comfort of normalcy. I remember when this story was breaking, with all these bodies were turning up on Gilgo Beach, and it was shocking, and it was a case of what's going on here. Like, is there a serial killer on the loose? We need to catch up. And then all of a sudden the case went seemingly cold. Weather was no activity in that. Every once in a while the people be drumming up some noise about why is anything happening? And then we hear, well, someone now else is taking over the investigation. Things are going to happen still. It took so long, but then finally we got word heard from the DA, Ray Tierney. Take a listen. Greater than. My office filed a superseding indictment charging the defendant Heuermann with a 7th charge, murder in the 2nd degree, for the murder of Valerie Mack, which occurred in 2000. I remind everyone that all of these cases and all of these murders are just allegations, and we look forward to proving them in court. As previously stated, the work of the Gilgo Task Force is ongoing and continuing. And when I said that, I meant that the defendant is now charged with the murder of 7 young women, us, and You Can Steer from 1993, Valerie Mack from 2000, Jessica Taylor from 2003, Morning Maureen Brainerd Barnes in Melissa Park County from 2009, Megan Waterman from 2000, I'm sorry, for 2010, June and Amber Costello from September 2010. It took a while to get all 7 of those charges superseding indictment after. Superseding indictment put now, you hear. He's going to be tried for. All 7 at the same time. It took so long to get there, which brings us to our first question in our investigation tonight, which is an important one, right? How did they catch the accused killer? It took a lot. Why, it takes long. But how did they end up catching the accused killer here? To help answer that question, forensic death investigator Joseph Scott Morgan. He's also the host of the extremely popular Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan podcast. Also joining us, former New York police officer, retired police lieutenant commanding officer of the Nassau County Police K-9 Unit, Mike Gould, is with us. Great to have both of you here. Before we start talking about, I want to listen to a little bit more from the D, because he has provided some of the details through the years. Let's take a listen. The murder, the defendant, and you've got to a cell and a burner phone, which is prepaid and anonymous. And for each of the murders, he got an individual Bernard phone and used that to communicate with the victims. And then shortly after the death of the victims, he then get rid of the burner phone. And come right away in December of 2012. Cast analysts as special agents with the cast unit of the FBI, they immediately began looking at that South that they compared the victims' phones with. Well, with the burner phones, and they immediately honed in on some similarities in the massive People Park area, and they look at the area of a confluence of 4 cell towers. And they realized that this had significance because the perfect perpetrator of these crimes was probably located within this area. During around the time of the murder, the FBI also managed to do that for an area in Midtown Manhattan. There was hair recovered from Maureen of Rain and Bonds for a belt buckle that was around from Lax. With regard to Megan, there were 3 hairs recovered. Her one out from around her, and area 1 from around her. 4-leg area in the rollout, and then there was 1 caught between the tape. And that was recovered. Amber Castle, also I hear a significant hymn that was recovered during that time. During the time of the recovery, there was an abandonment sample obtained. From the defendant via the pizza box and the pizza that was in the pizza box, the DNA profile was obtained from that pizza. Subsequent to the defendant's arrest, a buccal swab was taken to the defendant, a DNA profile was obtained from that Google swab, and the buccal swab of the defendant matches the DNA profile from that of the abandonment sample in the pizza box. First generation, a Chevrolet Avalanche without a unique feature that the pickup was between the cab and the bet, and that was identified again. That was E2010. But what it wasn't until I am watching of that was searched by the task, and this individual was identified that individual was Rex Heuermann, the defendant. A story Michael. It's case like for more than a decade. We're waiting. But it seems a lot of the information was there in the beginning for talking about cell phones in a very unique vehicle. Yeah, thanks for having so. This is something very familiar to me. I'm very familiar with Google Beach. In fact, ironically, I used to train the storms all along there because it's desolate and it's a great place to train dogs, particularly cadaver dogs, so that was in the late 90s, of course. But what happened in this since 2010, when the first victim was found by a cadaver dog, one of my colleagues in the Suffolk County Police Department, really terrific, a dog handler, had a great dog, was able to find the first victim. But then it went cold. There was a lot of validations of police corruption. A police chief here got fired, went to jail. Not necessarily tied to this case, but he was. Implicated, he was a suspect of that the district attorney, he went to jail. So there was a lot of things this new task force, fortunately, a new police commissioner. And they really reinvigorated the investigation, but if it wasn't for that, the cadaver dog found them. They wouldn't have that. So it was really tremendous what the work is done by the task force the last few years of putting all this digital evidence together. You know, Scott Morgan sold. It seems that they used the Chevy Avalanche in coordination with some of the cell phone data, and they kind of zero in on the sky, of all things in the city of New York, to positively identify the suspect in their eyes. Of course, it was pizza crust. It's a famous phrase. You've got to have the pie, man, and yeah. You know, you think about this abandonment sample, where it S anybody S. Game on at that point, I knew you leave this behind, and of. Of course, this is kind of an M+. It's no forgive me, but when you eat something, you're going to deposit. Spittle on the cross remaining, assuming that S, were they. Got to sample from a supposed touch DNA, and then they go in and they do the coastal swap to come from that. You know what you want? You have that. Once you have that foundation of those DNA building blocks, you can go out and you can create a more robust. In case you go back in and you cover these hair samples that are familial hair samples. And then you begin to think about this in terms of a genetic genealogy, which we veal a lot about over the past years. Have with that, and so you build a case out with that. And here's the thing along with the cellular that you have, which deals in numbers obviously because you're repaying. You have specific locations, and then these NAMA poll numbers that you're talking about with DNA fingerprinting. I'm not saying it's a slam dunk. However, I think that it's a very difficult pill for the defense to climb. Some of the other things that witnesses have said through the years in identifying? The truck and the drivers, that it was a very large man. This guy does not like you, no, he's not going to disappear in a crowd. He's going to stick out this case. Huge N, knowing what we know, we have a certain perception of him. I think that is another part of this case that is very unique and very incriminating, Mike. Yeah, so he was described by witnesses and over 6'6", right? He says stood out, but remember he was like a very prominent healing to literally 2 miles as the crow flies from the burial sites or the disposal sites, and he was a prominent architect, travel back for the New York from Massapequa Park every day. And it's kind of a Yuri to know that this person lived in this kind of bedroom community of Long Island, went to work every day, and they missed them. There was a lot of theories for that hit 10 or 12 years that transfer. All I do is a lot of theories again, pointing to the police department according to a bunch of different theories, but they never had, so the police did, and back never said. I agree with Joseph, this is a too digital scientific case that they have to prove. I think that the battle of experts, when it comes down to the DNA and does so yeah, I think they have a very strong case. The attorneys for a terrific Michael Brown is very charismatic. He said like the pit wall a pit bull, so to speak, and so we'll see how it ends up. Absolutely, our guests are sticking around. Coming up next. What is the significance of the wife and daughter's DNA? We initially informed about that there has been the father of the I just feel bad for his wife and children. I'm so fortunate that he is what he is. I just wish it with his family along, Gil with the child along with his wife and children, and his wife, to let him have some peace, not their fault. Can't be responsible for other people's actions. You're just kind of like, I get it. We sign, put him on the back burner and get back to our lives, and I'm so worried about our community again and our children. Step forward. The courts take care of him. That's a neighbor of the accused serial killer, and being the family of an accused serial killer, what a tough spot that is. I mean, a difficult spot. Yeah, the accused has been in bars is enough to deal with people in the public on a day-to-day basis for the family does. And it seems that the family is going to play a role in the truck well as well. Let me show you why we re-talking about some DNA evidence that was recovered in this case from the wife, and first 4 of the victims had DNA from the suspect's wife or daughter. This is all from the memorandum of law from the state. Begin with the victim of Valerie Mack. Female hair on Valerie Mack inside garbage bags containing the victim. They matched Victoria, the daughter of the accused killer. Victim Maureen Bernard Barnes, female hair on her. The buckle of her belt, restraining her lower body, allegedly matches the suspect's wife face. Victim Megan Waterman, 2 female hairs on her, outside the head area and tape in the area of the head, matching according to the state. The suspect's wife, a son, and then Juve got every Costello female they re-oned her tape, in the area of the head allegedly matching the suspect's daughter. So, with that in mind, the next question in our investigation relative to this evidence. What is the significance of the wife and daughter's DNA? Here to help with our investigation back with us runs a death investigator, Joseph Scott Morgan, also the host of the podcast Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan, and also joining us, the attorney representing the children, the accused serial killer. It's best that of this with us, that S and Joseph, great to have you both here. Let me ask you first. Best from your perspective, the legal perspective, and where this trial is going, go down. What is the significance of the wife and daughter's DNA here? Well, it's an invitation for confirmation bias, which is exactly what Mike Brown and the defense argued in their motion to include. Again, you have this never-before-held admissible completely methodology ESTA's DNA that is now taken for the forefront in this case, and, obviously, the court of public opinion and the port of that press and the media. It is a slam dunk, but legally, you have to have generally accepted scientific principles backing this methodology, which the defense, I think, correctly argues it doesn't exist. That a gate, stop it right out of the back. So, of course, now that the judges made the ruling that the DNA is going to go in after attack, that a trial as well saying, look, it's novel, it's never been helped to get this little before. This is magic, it is not science. But it is significant because prosecution wants to stack on as many inferences on entrances possible, and obviously the DNA that is daughter and wife of matching DNA strands, since victims of confirmation bias, it runs completely afoul. I believe if this gets appealed after a trial to establish Court of Appeals precedent, but it's clearly important legally for the prosecution. Jessica Morgan, from an investigator's perspective, what is the significance of having a wife and daughter's hair? The victims, 4 of the victims. Here, well, it shows familial connection. I think 4-4, which is a big part of this, right? Because where else would the hairs have originated from? You're talking very specific genetic connectivity here. They would approximate, positions in those vehicles perhaps, or in that vehicle if that est from source of the origin or was in the house where they re-domiciled. What's really curious about this whole thing, Ben, is that if this case was being prosecuted in daughter state, it might reflect differently here because the standard is so much higher, and I concur with counsel. New York is still caught up in the 1920. It's because they are reusing the Fry standard, which was literally established in the early 20s. I think it is kind of a general accepted saying. If the judge says that it is acceptable, it is acceptable. Dogbert standard came along, I think, in 93, and that is how far behind New York is, as progressive-minded as they are, and they talk about how progressive they are. They're still caught up in this loop. And it is going to what it is going to work against. And I think in this particular case, and it might shock. The court at S in the making some kind of decision, but moving forward in the future relative to maybe adopt an adult for standards to fry, different standard for permitting this type of new scientific evidence. Let me ask you best, maybe explain further what you meant when you said confirmation bias. Yeah, so the Court of Appeals in New York in 2020 in a cause in the case called People versus Williams, they said, the near repetition of a questionable methodology by a judge doesn't make it. Generally accepted in the words, you can repeat questionable things until we reach a former, the story so that S. What I meant, so you have the daughter S DNA, the wife S DNA, now you re-asking that the jury too.
You know what it is?
Therefore, Mr. Heuermann, his DNA also is there, and therefore based on this completely novel methodology you have to conclude, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, that he did it as opposed to anyone else. I mean, what is the probability? And then that S. When you know people, say it S. It S that S that S. The problem is, as was just pointed out with these types of novel, completely at the forefront. A not peer-reviewed, not care-tested. Methodologies that are inviting confirmation bias. You have a suspect, you have a horrific facts after hard. Facts make bad law. All right, that S. The old adage, and so justice demands an answer. And the jury S invited to the inference upon. Inference, while at the same time this claiming that, and arrived at the verdict, and that S, the confirmation bias, it must be it, because the science that untested says it is, Jessica Morgan, no one is going to believe that the daughter or the wife would be involved in this, or are responsible for. He S the X. Could the explanation potentially that it S like the science is wrong here? Here that is these hairs would not be connected to the wife and daughter. But if it's okay, if it is connected, what you know is going to be that they took part in this. Oh no, that we're not going to leave that they had involvement, but again, back to this word of Ben for inference. You think about proximity, proximate, who would proper somebody where these hairs, kind of originate from Boulder aside, at the same location. They use the same transportation modality, that travel along. So there's going to be an opportunity for these hairs to attach himself along the way here. Here's another thing too. We begin to think about, and we're re-talking about nuclear DNA testing as opposed to mitochondrial DNA testing, nuclear too. Going to be dazzled, and I can tell you this course can be dazzled if you think the numbers on March Conroe be an R overwhelming weight. Ollie start to get into the nuclear DNA because we re-talking about this is the methodology that is utilized in order to map the entire human genome, all right? These numbers are going to be overwhelming. And when you begin to present this before jury and they were going to talk about numbers here, quintillion, things like that, they came in a human. Mind can barely begin to comprehend this. If they're going to be overwhelmed, I think simple probability here when they hear this, the root of this, though, is going back to scientific plausibility. You know it has not been peer-reviewed in state. Well, anywhere at this point onwards, being utilized for this purpose alone, used in the medical community for years and years. We do things in nuclear DNA testing to search for disease origins of disease. The source thinks they even using it to, you re-talking about bringing back things. Like the woolly mammoths, that sort of thing. Things that are so decayed. It's so far in our past, but it doesn't have a criminal application here. This is our first front of the gate with that S. What makes this so significant, I guess the argument is, you got to start somewhere, right? I will say this is going to be a hotly contested trial and issue within the draw vest is going to stick around. Justin Scott Morgan, appreciate your valuable time to see you again soon. But default, and we continue our investigation of the Q's Gilgo Beach, Long Island serial killer case that began when a young woman called 911 and then disappeared but was discovered next, shocked the nation. Here's the story. Shannon Gilbert's frantic 911 call still echoes through the fog of Gilgo Beach. A terrified young woman running barefoot through the dark, pleading for help before vanishing into the marsh. Her disappearance of 2010 would expose a far deeper horror lurking king along the Long Island coast as police search for Shannon and the end-earth remains of other women, each with a hauntingly similar story. Each discarded near the scene. Desolate stretches San Shannon's case, once dismissed as an accident, became the thread that unraveled. The serial killer's hidden frail, her family fought for years to prove she was more than a runaway escort, that her death was the beginning of a nightmare. Today, Shannon Gilbert's name stands as both a mystery and a warning, her desperate call for help uncovered too dark. This that had stalked the shores of Gilgo Beach for years unseen, but never forgot. this entire investigation case story however you want. Begin with the 911 call from Shannon Gilbert, and it is a tragic and chilling 911 call. I want to play for you right now. Yeah. And some of the estimates. The committee asked 3 for you. There's somebody after. Okay, where are you? Some of us too, where I am I don't staff. It really is. What people want to come in. That's how it all started now. Suspected serial killer is being charged for a series of murders. All at once, take a look. Here's a list of the victims. The 7 victims: Juve got Sandra Castillo from 1993, Valerie Mack from 2000, Jessica Taylor from 2003, Maureen Brainerd Barnes 2007, Melissa Barthélemy 2009, Megan Waterman 2010, Amber Costello 2010. Their SA name missing from that list. Connected to All of Us started. Brings us to the next question in our investigation. What about Shannon Gilbert? What about Shannon Gilbert? She's not considered a victim, and this is no evidence. Connecting her to the Long Island, suspected Long Island serial killer. Here to help answer the question about what about Shannon Gilbert is the attorney representing the family of Shannon Gilbert as Sean. Ray John, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Great to see you again. Catch up. Fill us in here. What's going on? Will there be any sense of justice or an answer for Shannon Gilbert? I believe there will be an answer. I ask that the matter, how strongly supported it is by evidence, will not be accepted by everyone as true answer, just like the killer in England, the strangler, the day. People just do and think that somebody else did it, or the bullet that Judge Kennedy was there more than one bullet. He'll always be those who say that, but we are headed toward a trial. We just on Friday received a decision. This is breaking news for you. We see a Dr. Peter Hackett be a Team B to hide Shannon in his home and medicate her that morning, and we sued him being responsible for her death. That lawsuit has been pending all these years. It was a lawsuit that enabled me to get to 911 tapes that everybody talks about and to get it released, to get those released to the public, that the Dr. Hackett's lawyer, who was a former partner of the district attorney, Thomas Spoda, he made a motion to dismiss a case called summary judgment motion, and just on Friday, we learned that we won the motion. He threw out their motion to dismiss, and we are going to truck, so there will be some that emerges from all of that. Let me ask you this: job pursued, right? Now, what sort of information will you be able to access as a result of the civil case moving forward? We have an opportunity to depose people. We have an opportunity to get records that otherwise you might not be able to get. Presently, I have subpoenaed the records of the Suffolk County Police Department S criminal file in this case, as well as the medical examiner S office in the past. They've always resisted saying that it's an open, active, ongoing investigation. We can't give these things up. On May 13th in 2022, the police commissioner and the head of the investigation, Side Lieutenant Detective Kevin Byard, announced at an added press conference held at Suffolk County Community College that shot and died of an unfortunate tragic accident. The accident, which they do not define, they have no idea how does a legit accident occurred. Whoever heard of a homicide? It grouped of people from the police department making a conclusion without evidence. And they made that statement, so I said, look, if that's your position, it's a civil case. It's no longer a criminal case. It's an accident. So I want your file. You're fighting in court as we speak. The two try to prevent me from getting that file. I mean that it's still an open, active, ongoing investigation when they've done absolutely nothing to pursue it. So your work, what we going to fight to get that, and we going to get other information as well. Can't I cue and propose anybody anymore because we repassed that. We filed a note of issue, meaning we ready for trial. And I don't like depositions. I've talked up Hackett as family neighbors. I've taken that many depositions of different people. Let me ask you this. Our contra. Here is a question people are wondering: is there any connection between your civil lawsuit and the accused Long Island Gilgo Beach serial killer who is facing criminal charges for 7 murders? We have several witnesses who have Heuermann with Oak Beach, and so people have connected him with Shannon Gilbert, as well as with the former corrupt police chief James Burke. We have these witnesses, but they're all uncorroborated, so their testimony is not useful at this stage. That's the problem. But these people have come forward and connected them up. They're connected by geography. This girl is found in the graveyard of sex workers. She's a sex worker, and we have Dr. Michael Biden said that she was strangled to death based upon the hyoid bone in her throat. And I worked with him on that. that we have an enormous amount of evidence that connects him. And I just said we had time to do you. No, we don't have it. But to say to you, no, as people say, well, the wife and child, the hair. They re not involved if you re going to convict bricks you and because of hair that belongs to his family was charging. His family that the circumstantial evidence of their involvement with threat humans murders and the bodies are overwhelming. But nobody goes after that. Just the police department is taking a very weird perspective of this entire case from human to Hackett 2. Shannon Gilbert, and I'm going to pursue that a truck. Bottom line here, we have about 30 seconds left here, John. What do you expect to learn during the course of your trial or revealed or uncovered? God only knows we have revealed so many things. Through the testimony of people in depositions and the like, you know it, much of what we've revealed is largely been ignored willfully, so I think they're just so much. I couldn't use it, nor will I, as a discovery device is to just open it, blow up an investigation by the police department, but I still say from day one until now, the police department does not belong in this case. They blow in each case. They've now blown the human case by not charging. The wife in making a person of interest, a daughter in the case, when the wife goes on national TV and says, my husband, he's still my hero. Her hero, for with all those birds that can only mean one thing, she'll SI they're in it. She'll some way connected to it, and they threw that out right at the beginning of their case. They blew Shannon Gilbert case wide open by are you making a mess of it? So much so that we call for the intervention of the federal authorities, and we were ignored. So that's still the case today. John Wright, great to catch up with more than try the case. We're out of time, unfortunately, for now, but obviously, we will stay on the story. All right, coming up next, just what is the accused killer's defense? Everybody's to our country. Ibar tent in Massapequa, which is just north of Massapequa Park. When I heard the name Rex Your Men, and then I finally saw what he looked like, I said, I think I've actually surfaced got 41 Rex got arrested in Massapequa Park, and I realized how close was my house. It was very crazy because I ended up seeing a dress we re going up all over online, and my friends and I actually drove the house, and we realized at SA5 is Roy Moore live, which was crazy just knowing the fact that so many people doing tonight. Let's suppose me and all this time nobody had any idea about it. There's a lot of shock in that neighborhood. We'll be tight. This is a nice neighborhood. Real nice neighborhood. In Massapequa Park, on Long, where the accused killer was living with his family now. I want to take a listen to his attorney. We've been talking about it. He's got a very good attorney, a very credible attorney. Here's Michael J. Brown talking about his client. Circumstantial in terms of speed. My client, the only thing I can tell you that it's safe is you said. You're what I do. We obviously do on evidence this. You have the case, everybody. To our country. So Geneval 6, and we'll look. Forward to fight. This is an important one. So a lot of the evidence has now gotten into the hands of the defense, and understand with that. It's prosecutors' cases, which brings us to the next question in our investigation. What is the accused killer's defense? What's the defense to this? Can take many different forms. We see it all the time here for TV. Here to help with our investigation is former New York police officer, retired police lieutenant commanding officer of the Nassau County Police K-9. Unit Mike Gouldan still with us, is the attorney representing the children of the accused killer investment ad. With us, all right, that's how would you describe the defense here? What is the defense going to be in front of the jury? The defense has a Sisyphean task ahead of them, in light of the last two rulings by the judge in this case, which obviously denied the motion for separate trials and for the exclusion of the DNA, which we in earlier in the show, so you know. Anytime you have a defense like this, you want to almost add a mazer. You want to break it down to every single instance. You do want the big picture getting in front of the jury. You want to break down every single act, every single interaction, every single occurrence into its most, black and white components, and taking into single frames from a bunch of single frames into the movie. The prosecution wants to show you movies. You want to show you the story when painting a picture, hence the adverse inferences by adverse inference is that we talk but earlier, that is, the DNA is so key to their case because you have this completely novel, untested, previously inadmissible methodology now taking center stage. What is arguably the biggest trial in New York's history, certainly this century. So the defense is strategies to do the exact same thing they've done at the hearings, but in front of them. A jury of his peers, which is to attack this methodology house, procured. The lack of credibility scientifically around it, and just to hammer them the point that this is all circumstantial at the end of the day. All you need is one. You want to go the record for appeal. So this is a trial where I think we know where it's S, obviously at the trial level, but this is a trial lawyer where you have to build the record for appeal, because again, facts usually make critical. Part of this case in this investigation was, it took so long, and a lot of that had to do with the police take. A look. Let us talk about James Burke as the fallover in New York police and the police chief out there. This is all from Newsweek. Burke did not view the murder investigation as a high priority. He discouraged collaboration with other law enforcement agencies. He denied subpoenas for records related to cell phone towers, but this is the big one he also faced. Internal investigations for allegations of drug use, engaging in relationships with sex workers. Did you hear that one? Engaging in relationships and sex workers, who are the victims in all these, in this case? Sex workers and other misconduct. During his time as chief, he resigned in 2015, was federally for allegedly beating a man in handcuffs. Michael, how concerned are you about what the jury might think if they find out former Chief James Burke and his alleged relationships with the sex workers? Yeah, I think they will be taken if Michael Brown introduced the stories, got to use a dirty cop. He went to jail for police misconduct. So he was a suspect, at least, in that the guise of the car, and tarnished the reputation for 10 years of the good, hard-working people of the Suffolk County Police Department? So this story has been going around and around and around for years. You're on Long Island to the jury pool? I think they're certainly going to take that into consideration. One point I wanted to make from that Jones Beach go beat that you know to Where Is My Own Eyes? Crime dumping ground because of its proximity to Kennedy Airport. The Belt Parkway, so as far as New York is concerned, you can drive 10 miles and dump a body. So there's that has been a dumping ground for 30 years. But two, to the question is this is going to be a battle of the experts, DNA expert in new technology. They going to battle it out. They have to establish reasonable doubt that what the defense attorney is going to do, he does. You need to rip, you can put up a defense, but that where they going to attack this. But I still think uphill battle for sure. Yeah, I think roll green on that, the vest. So, and looking at the case, to me, it seems like it is what I refer to as a reason, like reasonable doubt, is the standard in every case. I get it. But some of the trials we cover here, the defense or the defense team is pointing the jury in another direction that, hey, their suspicion over here, their suspicion over there. To me it is. Is there any of that? Did you suspect will be any of that could be pointed at the people who are in charge of the investigation themselves? Yes, so if you're out here on the North Fork and in Suffolk County, especially if everybody knows the players that we just referenced, the former DA, the former police, that they're SA. Former gentleman serving time, also connected tangentially, last panelist to refer to a doctor and Dr. Hackett, so certainly you could do that. I do think that Mike Brown's strategy, as he's always said, he gets straight to the point, and the point here is again that since it's very, very decades-old case, the DNA evidence is completely novel, right? And it says, the old adage, at some point science becomes indistinguishable from magic, that SAA. Nice little phrase, but that literally the argument that he making to you know he is saying. Basically, this is so novel, you cannot possibly. What you hear, how they arrived at their conclusion, a reasonable juror, and say, hey, maybe there's something more to this here and again. I believe the strategy is to preserve the record for appeal, because if there is a trial, and this is going to be the people on this as sure as I sit here today, it's always great to have you on the program, great to see tonight. Michael obviously on all the time as well. Thanks so much for your insight and your valuable time. Tonight now, every case, every trial has at least two sides, and I am sure the accused killer will put on a very vigorous defense. The biggest problem, though, is all of the murders will be tried at once. Even if there may be doubt about one, will it be enough to raise doubt? For all the cases, all the victims, but you never really know until the case is tried, been surprised before. It's the politic. And we'll keep digging for answers as the investigation